What scares you? It's a simple question, with likely many answers. Regardless of what you find unsettling, there are likely at least a few horror games that inspire a push of the pause button and a walk away from the TV. It can be challenging for developers to strike a truly terrifying chord, but Saturnalia aims to give players an experience that does just that. It's a bold, extremely unique hybrid of genres, but does the experimentation pay off? Saturnalia begins innocuously enough with Anita, one of the game's protagonists, driving into the village of Gravois. It's 1989, and Anita has spent the last year evaluating Gravois for an international buyer interested in the village's value as a mining settlement. A geologist, Anita is well versed in the world of rocks and minerals. During her stay, Anita has fallen for a married man, and after receiving an ultrasound, she comes to find that she's also carrying his baby. Unwilling to give birth in Gravois, Anita returns from the doctor's visit to pack her belongings, inform her lover, and spend one last night in the village. As you may be able to guess, this final night isn't going to go smoothly. After a brief prologue set in the daytime where Anita discovers that virtually all of the villagers are taking part in Mass at the local church, the game fast-forwards to night, where most of the experience will take place. You'll continue to follow Anita's journey throughout Saturnalia, but she's not alone in this nightmare. You'll also control Paul, Sergio, and Claudia, for a total of 4 playable protagonists. Each character has their own reason for being in Gravois that's revealed as the game progresses. You'll unlock each one at a time as you explore the village. The story of Saturnalia focuses as much on the village of Gravois as it does its inhabitants. As you creep around the game's world, you slowly peel back the layers of this quiet town. It's a place with rich history, much of which is likely better to stay buried. There's so much to keep track of, in fact, that the game provides you with a web of sorts to help you keep your findings organized. As you discover new characters, items, documents, and, importantly, objectives, the web will grow in size, helping you to visualize how everything's connected. It's a really great mechanic that I'd love to see more games incorporate. It acts as a tangible way to see your progress and pushes you to explore every last dark corner of Gravois. At any given time, I had what felt like close to 10 active objectives at once, so without the web, it's likely I would have often forgotten what I was supposed to be doing. As soon as you unlock a new character, you're free to play as them at any point moving forward, but you can also switch freely to characters that you've already unlocked. You do this by either speaking to your desired character or calling them on one of the many phones located throughout the village. Each protagonist has their own arc advanced by exploring the world, but it doesn't matter who makes the discoveries. Paul may complete an objective seemingly intended for Claudia, but as long as you complete the objective, the story will progress. There are some instances where you need a certain character, but for the most part, you can stick with your favorite. This flexibility is nice. It would be a huge pain to have to constantly rotate between characters, but it's so flexible that the narrative loses focus. Dealing with Anita's affair as Paul doesn't really hold the same impact it would have if Anita saw it through herself. If you couldn't already tell, there's a lot to see in Gravois and its surrounding areas. Whether you're roaming its streets, its mines, or its various buildings, it's best to keep your eyes peeled and your pace measured. Without question, the strongest element of Saturnalia is its exploration. There's a lot to do in this game, which could have been overwhelming, but it's not, because the game almost never forces you to do any one thing. Unsure what you're supposed to be doing in the mines? Just head back up to the village and see what you can find by walking down a road you haven't tried yet. If you're ever combing through a room, scratching your head because you don't know what to do in there, you can just leave the room. Barring a few small areas, the entire world is open to you as soon as the sun sets, so don't be afraid to leave an area that doesn't seem to be bearing any fruit. There's a good chance it'll come back into play later. The freedom afforded to you in Saturnalia is wonderful, and the pace of exploration is hypnotic. I'd almost go as far to say that it's relaxing, if you weren't being hunted. That's right, there's something less than friendly here in Gravois, and it wants you gone. You learn more about the creature as the story progresses, but none of those discoveries make it any less inclined to take you out. Most of the time, you're safe, but once you hear the creepy music set in, you've got to be on alert. Making too much noise will bring the creature into your area, but even if you're quiet as a mouse, it'll find you eventually. When it does, you've got two choices. You can run, or you can hide. There is no way to defend yourself. There are some hiding spots that you can jump into in order to wait the creature out, but generally, it's just wandering around your vicinity. As long as you stay out of its line of sight, it'll move on after a few moments. That being said, as the night carries on, the creature grows more aggressive and astute. You're likely to get captured at some point in your playtime, but that doesn't spell game over. Instead, the character you're currently controlling is whisked away and tied up in another part of the village. From there, it's on one of the remaining characters to go and save the creature's prisoner. You don't have to perform this rescue. All 4 characters aren't required to finish the game. But if all 4 characters end up getting captured at the same time, well, that's where things get interesting. You see, in addition to being a horror game, Saturnalia is also a roguelike. If all 4 characters are nabbed by the creature, it's not as simple as reloading a checkpoint. The game will reload, but now the entire village layout is different. All of the key locations will be procedurally regenerated. This may sound trivial, but you don't have easy access to a map in Saturnalia. There are a number of physical maps posted around the village, but you can't take them with you, so you're going to have to learn the layout by memory. One of the only advantages you can garner over your predator is a lay of the land, but if you slip up too many times, you're going to have to learn that land all over again. Additionally, you'll lose all of your consumable items, like the matches that allow you to explore the mines, as well as the tools you've acquired that are instrumental in progressing the narrative. You can reacquire these items once the layout is reset, but suffice it to say, if you get caught too many times, it's going to cost you dearly. These consequences significantly raise the stakes. Typically, failing in a game just means losing a few minutes and having to replay a section over again, but here, you're losing significantly more progress. It's worth noting that you do retain all key items you've acquired and progress on the web, so you're not starting from scratch if you bite the dust. Horror games are inherently intense because of the situations in which you're placed, but many modern horror games are as generous with checkpoints as the latest Call of Duty campaign.
Little pig.
I still love those games, but when the gameplay mechanics support the terror as much as the context, an even stronger sense of fear develops. The first few hours of Saturnalia were some of the most intense hours I've spent with a game in years. I was constantly on edge, deep into a new area, fearing that the creature would find me and pull me out before I'd fully explored it. The prospect of having to find my place all over again was just as unsettling as what was stalking me. As time went on, however, my fear began to transition into frustration. The more the game that I'd explored, the fewer places I could turn to when it felt like I'd hit a dead end. There's only so much to see in the game, so by the last couple of hours, it began to feel like I was searching for a needle in a haystack. I'm pretty patient and was willing to look for what I was missing, but it's a lot harder to take your time when there's a monster trying to kill you. Eventually, my experience devolved into desperately combing through the world as quickly as possible, constantly having to rescue whichever character was the latest to be kidnapped. After a while, I realized I wasn't having fun anymore. I caved and looked up the solution on the internet, and I'm glad I did, because I'd been missing a small item in an area that I'd already visited. From there, the rest of the experience went smoothly, but I'd ended up wasting an hour aimlessly wandering around. Balancing fear and frustration is a tall order. If you're constantly faced with the same scenario over and over again, it stops being scary. The brain knows what to expect. Nothing's scarier than the unknown, so when the creature was whisking me back to its weird torture pole for the 5th time, my heart was racing for the wrong reasons. It was before I'd ever been captured, when I was most careful with my footsteps and trying to familiarize myself with the twisted world around me, that I was most unnerved and having the most fun. Now, look, it's entirely possible that another player wouldn't get so stuck and frustrated like I did, especially because you can just lower the game's difficulty, but it's clear that Saturnalia didn't quite stick the landing, at least relative to its opening hours. Despite my fatigue, I never grew tired of looking at the world of Gravois, with its incredibly unique art style. It's intentionally obscure, with many objects hard to make out and your field of view limited. Even the characters move at a strange, choppy frame rate. The music cakes on even more atmosphere, and trust me, you won't hear a shaker the same way again for quite a while. Playing Saturnalia kind of feels like you're in a dream, or more aptly, a nightmare. I think Saturnalia will appeal to a small niche of players. Many are closed off to horror altogether, and I certainly don't think this game is going to convert them. Others will likely bounce off the game's unguided nature, understandably frustrated by having to run through the village yet again looking for some elusive clue. But if this game seems interesting to you, I highly recommend you give it a try. I've never played anything quite like it. It's a truly scary experience, not just thematically, but mechanically. So step into Gravois. Hopefully, you'll see the sunrise.